Earlier this year, I resigned from my job. And you can just about imagine the questions I've been getting from my family and friends. But the biggest one I'm getting is, of course, what are you doing now? And honestly, it's been really hard to answer. Not because I don't know what I'm doing or what I want to do, but because it's kind of hard to explain, and I've been using a lot of time to figure out how to say it, and how to say it without sounding, honestly, like a crazy person. But before I answer that question, what am I doing now? I want to explain kind of the journey of how I got there, the origin story and the insights I learned along the way, and how I ultimately got to what I call commitment theory. So where did it all begin? It began 6 years ago, where I had this great idea. And the idea was that our brains were computers, and if we used software development principles of refactoring on our source code, we'd be able to optimize our life and be efficient, and et cetera, et cetera. It was that take on productivity. And I ran with it. For every day, for like 6 months, I wrote at the coffee shop. And I remember that last day, I finished the last section of the outline, and I closed my laptop, and honestly, I've never looked at the manuscript again. And the reason is because it was a little forced. I had the idea, and I just started going. I didn't, do research. I didn't look. I just went at it. I just said that's right, and I'm gonna go with it. And it was just totally forced. It didn't work. It didn't feel right. And I wasn't even really doing the stuff that I had put in the book. So I closed it and I said, well, at least I got to live like this for a while and see if it works. And I never even tried. So I know it just wasn't right. And so I closed the door on that, but the idea remained, and it just percolated over time. And ultimately I came up with some insights along the way, and I'm going to share a couple with you, 3 actually, that were the key insights that led me ultimately to the theory. The first one is called the Peter Principle. This is a common principle in business that says any individual within a hierarchy or an organization is promoted to their level of incompetence. There's proof of this everywhere. It's a universal rule at this point. In the most common transition that this happens is with an individual contributor to a manager. Very, very common. This person's a rock star at their job. Let's have them manage the work, and now they're really bad at that. They're really incompetent at that new job. And that sort of makes sense. You can see how that would be. But the truth is, we often promote ourselves in real life to these levels of incompetence. Think about becoming a spouse or a parent, or starting a new hobby, or tackling a huge, gigantic project. I've done those things. I've promoted myself to incompetence more times than I'd care to admit. And a lot of people chalk that up to kind of a skills gap. You just don't have the skills. And that makes sense. And it's not true. It's true. Especially, going from a manager, you're accountable for yourself before, and now you're accountable for a whole team's work. That's a huge shift. And that requires a lot of different skills to develop. But I think it's more accurate to say that we're lacking the systems to manage this new slate of commitments that we have. And I think that's the key. Secondly, is that the modern world is just brutal. It's just brutal out there. And it's because technology has evolved far past our biology. We are ancient brains in a high-tech world. We're just not built for this. The modern noise of the world, how many notifications and emails and chats and texts and everything. Combine that with the pressure of social media, the expectations that we place on ourselves. You have to be the best parent, you have to be the best employee, the best spouse, the best friend. The expectations are so high. And the technology also brings us immense opportunity. When I grew up on the internet, and starting a website or starting a business online was an incredible endeavor. Now you can do it in a day. You can wake up in the morning, start a website, be accepting credit cards by the end of the day, and for free. But that also all that opportunity just kind of adds more to the pile, more pressure to the pile. We were built to forage nuts and berries in the woods. But now we have all these information patches that we can constantly forage in. And it's just really hard for us. And this pressure threatens burnout at every corner, at every stage. And trust me, I know firsthand that that's the case. The third insight was that, computers run on an operating system. So there's hardware, our biology's hardware, right? Akin to a computer, but then the computers run on operating systems. And in many cases, a majority of the internet runs on open source. A majority of smartphones run on open source. So if computers have operating systems, then I asked myself, why don't we have freely available social operating systems for how we work alone or together? And that brings me full circle. So we're not a computer. I'm pretty convinced of that now that I've done enough research on that. But what are we? We're definitely a system. So what kind of system are we? Well, we're a biological system, okay? We take in matter, we convert it to energy and waste products. But there's a lot of biological systems, so that really doesn't explain truly what makes us different as human beings. Well, we're a thinking system. We take in sensory data, we combine that with past information and our model of reality, and we have thoughts. And what do we use those thoughts for? Why do we think? And that's to make predictions. And that's kind of where I came to, is that we are prediction systems primarily, at least when it comes to making changes within the world. So think about catching a ball. Our visual senses are actually a little delayed. And what that means is we have to use our model of reality, we have to use where we saw the ball in the past and make a prediction about where it's going to be in the future. Because we don't have a real-time feed of reality. We have to predict where that ball is going to be. We have to practice it, but after you do that enough times, it becomes easy. But that kind of prediction isn't quite what I wanted to talk about or to research. So that led me to what's the most special, the most powerful type of prediction we make. And that's a commitment. I've mentioned it several times in this video. A commitment is really a prediction. Yeah, I think I can do that. And an agreement. Yeah, I will do that. Those two things combined makes a commitment. And everything we've accomplished as a society, from the pyramids to space flight and everything in between, was because people committed to doing something and then they did it. Super powerful type of prediction, and that's what really makes us special. Our ability to look that far in the future and really agree that we're going to do that thing. But with that power comes a lot of peril. And here's the problem. Commitments are really easy to make. We are built to make them. We make them constantly, every day, automatically. But we are awful at making them accurate, especially commitments. Balls, that's simple. We have other mechanisms for why that's easy for us. But a commitment, that is complex because it involves the future, it involves reality, and life's going to get in the way. It always gets in the way. And I define willpower as our capacity to satisfy commitments, not make them. Making them is easy. I can commit to 100 things right now, but to actually sit down and do them, that's a whole other ball game. So some examples. Let's say I predict that I'm gonna get up every morning this week and exercise. Well, I can tell you from experience, by Wednesday, I'm gonna be hitting snooze and I'm feeling pretty pathetic about myself. On the weekend, I predict I'm going to, let's say, work on the side hustle. I'm gonna plan the vacation and I'm gonna clean out the garage. I think I can get that done. Well, by the end of the weekend, what happened? I didn't work on the side hustle. Maybe I thought about the vacation a little bit, and the garage is messier than it was when this weekend began. That is the problem with us. We can make commitments all day long. We're built to do that. But satisfying them, making them accurate, that's a whole other problem. And our ambition means we're constantly threatening burnout. We're feathering the accelerator and we're braking hard when life gets in the way, especially today, in today's modern world. And so that's the answer. That's my answer to what are you doing? This is what I'm doing. I'm doing commitment theory. Commitment theory is not a productivity hack, but it can explain why productivity hacks work. It's not an operating system, though it can be used to build them. Very effective. It's not a book. I made that commitment before, I made that prediction, and it was wrong. And I'm not going to make that same mistake again, at least not yet. What commitment theory is a philosophy. It's a way of designing your life around the fundamental unit of human endeavor, the commitment. And this means we can build, or I can build, a life of ambition without the threat of burnout. And what I'm doing is helping other people do that too. So if you want to get started, you can apply for a Lodestar workshop today. The link's going to be in the description. This is a hands-on, live, guided workshop. It's a perfect next step. It's a navigational system. That's what Lodestar is. It answers 3 questions that are foundational to every future commitment you're going to make. Where are you going? Why are you going there? And what do you need to do to get there? And it's no surprise that the answer to those 3 questions also will come in the form of commitments. If you're just curious about commitment theory, subscribe right now. Every week, I'm going to be posting content. I'm going to be doing deep dives into the philosophy, but also sharing practical applications of that philosophy that you can apply instantly after watching the videos. So until next time, I appreciate you, and goodbye.